Alright, so I've been wanting to do a video talking about the City of Enoch for a long time. Really because there's two different cities that are associated with Enoch, because there's two different Enochs. So one of them, obviously in the Bible, according to Genesis 4:17, Cain built a city, and he named it after his son Enoch. It says, after being banished to the land of Nod, east of Eden, for murdering Abel. And so basically, there's that one that's mentioned right at the beginning of the Bible that kind of gets overlooked. Doesn't get a lot of attention, really. You kind of don't really hear about it anymore. It's just that one verse, basically, it's all there is to it. And a lot of people don't even realize there's two Enochs. That verse just doesn't even exist to a lot of people. They don't even realize that person exists. But the other city of Enoch, that is attributed to the good Enoch, that one, really the only place that I can find that story comes from is in a book called The Pearl of Great Price. And that was basically I think it was Egyptian, like an ancient Egyptian text that happened to come into Joseph Smith's possession. Like some guy he came from Europe or some shit like that, and he was passing through New York or something when Joseph Smith was there, the prophet of the Mormon Church, and basically Joseph Smith bought the scrolls. He had some scrolls with him and stuff that had ancient Egyptian writing on them. So Joseph Smith, he bought those from the guy, and he translated them the same way he supposedly translated the Book of Mormon when he found those golden plates or whatever. It's the same kind of thing. He found these texts. He got these texts into his possession. He translated those texts, and those texts became what is called the Pearl of Great Price. And it's because it's not a very long book. It's pretty short, but it's worth a lot of. It's worth a lot, basically, because there's such precious information in that book. So it's like a pearl. How a pearl is small, but it's worth a great price, right? So that's basically the idea. And so in that book, it's kind of like, a lot of it is just kind of almost like recounting the book of Genesis, and it's like the Bible, like the Old Testament books. But it's almost like a different take on, a little bit of a different perspective of it or something, is what the Pearl of Great Price is. And there's one book called the Book of Moses in there, and Moses chapter 7. And I don't think it's a coincidence either that it happens to be the 7th chapter that talks about Enoch, since Enoch was the 7th from Adam. So I think there's a reason for that. But yeah, basically, in Moses chapter 7 of the Pearl of Great Price, it talks about the city of Enoch. So really, it's really like a pretty Mormon theology, almost like the idea of the city of Enoch, the good Enoch. That's really only found from Mormons. You can only find it from those books, and so I've been trying to figure out where that came from for a long time. I was actually raised Mormon, so I heard about it when I was a kid, and so I've always been fascinated by it. But they would tell us that, it's just basically the whole city that Enoch, led all people there. They called it Zion, actually, because they're of one heart and one mind, or whatever. So basically, he led all the righteous people there. And this happened before the time of Noah, obviously, because Enoch is Noah's grandfather. And so, all the righteous people went to the city of Enoch, or the city of Zion, and they were all taken to heaven. How it says in the Bible that Enoch walked with God, and or God took Enoch and he was not. Basically, he's saying he never died. He just kind of was taken to heaven with God. Well, in this story of the city of Zion that Enoch was kind of the prophet of, the whole city was like that. The whole city was so righteous that they were all taken to heaven. And so to me, that makes it seem like that's why during the time of Noah, it was so corrupted. I mean, obviously you had the Nephilim and fallen angels and stuff going on and causing problems. And that's probably part of the reason why God created Zion, or had everybody go to Zion who was righteous, to get out of there, basically. And so the only person that was left was Noah. He was the only righteous family or person, basically, that was left. And everybody else was taken to heaven with Enoch. And it actually mentions giants in the Pearl of Great Price in that chapter with Enoch. It talks about giants, which are, obviously going to be the Nephilim. That's what it's talking about. And so that kind of gives you some insight that, that's probably part of the reason why the world was so corrupted and stuff at Noah's time. And, like I said, all the righteous people were already gone by the time Noah, was born, basically. Because it even says in the book of Enoch that when Noah was born, that they went and, Methuselah went and found Enoch, basically their grandfather, and he was already living with the angels or something at that time or whatever, so he was already gone by then. So yeah, there was no righteous people left. And I think it's written in the scriptures somewhere, or it says it somewhere, that basically, as in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the end. Basically saying that how bad it was during Noah's time, that's how bad it's going to be in the end times. And it's strange, there's a book called Visions of Glory, and it was written by a guy, he retold his story to somebody else, and that guy wrote it down. The person who actually had the experience, I don't think it ever says his actual name, who he actually was. But basically, he was a Mormon guy, and he had these visions of the end times, basically visions of end of the world, pretty much. And in that book, he talks about Zion a lot, and the city of Enoch, and how Enoch built that city. And basically, in this story, in the last days, in his end times vision, that's what they end up doing. They end up going to Zion, which the Mormons believe is going to be in Missouri. The new Zion will be in Missouri, and they also, I think, believe that that's where the Garden of Eden could have happened to. And I don't know. I don't really know all about that, if that's true, or if there's anything to back that up. But basically, that's what they think. And so, Missouri is the location they're all going to walk to. Is kind of that the idea is because roads and stuff are going to be destroyed, cars aren't going to work in the end times, or you're not going to have access to vehicles very easily and stuff. And so basically, they're all going to have to walk to Missouri, which will become the new Zion, or City of Enoch, if you will. And so he even mentions in that book how, as they were walking there, basically, that they were becoming more righteous or whatever, and better, and that they became translated beings, is what he calls it. And basically, they would no longer require food and stuff. They'd be stronger and have more energy and everything, because they were translated, basically resurrected, in a sense. When you have a resurrected body, it's gonna be way better. It's gonna be way more advanced, and everything about it's gonna be better. But not only that, but now you're spiritual too, So it's you have all these spiritual abilities that you didn't have before and stuff. And then when they go, and then also in that same book, in Visions of Glory, when they establish Zion and they build the city again, basically, they make a fountain there. There's a fountain in the front of it, and if you drink any water from that, you'll never have to thirst again, basically. And there's there's also fruit growing there, and if you eat the fruit, you'll never be hungry again. And so basically, like, that city, like, once you got there, once you were, and you had to be righteous enough to get there, you had to be worthy to be in that city, right? And so basically, once you were there, all your needs were met, you know. And there were people, like in the book, he mentions this, people were basically camped outside of the city. That people who wanted to be part of it, but weren't quite worthy enough yet, they would like camp outside of it, and like every day they would try to get in, try to do better to get in, and they were just trying to be more righteous so that they could be accepted into it. Because at some point, basically, like in the City of Enoch, how in that story, in the Pearl of Great Price, that city was taken to heaven. And so it's the same thing in the end times and Visions of Glory, that city was also going to be taken to heaven at some point. And so you had to get in there before that happened. And so it's going to be like the days of Noah afterwards, where if you didn't make it in there before it got taken to heaven, you're just stuck on earth with all the wicked people. And actually in one of the verses, verse 20 of Moses 7, it says, "And it came to pass that Enoch talked with the Lord, and he said unto the Lord, Surely Zion shall dwell in safety forever. But the Lord said unto Enoch, Zion have I blessed, but the residue of the people have I cursed." And so that's kind of interesting. It's a weird wording of it, like residue of the people. Kind of sounds like the people who just didn't make it in, the people who just kind of were left over. So I don't know, it's kind of strange. I also forgot to mention that that word translated, when it says in the Bible that God took Enoch and he was not, I guess the word took actually means translated. And you know, that, like I said earlier, it's like when you basically become resurrected or something, or like your body becomes translated, you know, so now you're like spiritual, and I don't even know, it's kind of strange. It's like physical and spiritual at the same time, in a sense. But I think in actually that Vision of the Glory story, they basically were just trying to become totally spiritual at some point. Like it was just going to progressively get more spiritual until they just weren't even in the physical at all anymore, basically. But yeah, I also forgot to mention that the guy who wrote that story, or the guy who like told this story, how I mentioned that he was a Mormon guy. I guess after he told his story and like got the book published or whatever, he got excommunicated from the church. So the church kicked him out basically for telling that story. And so I think that's kind of strange. Like, why would the church kick him out just for talking about a vision that he had that involved the church? So really, that's all I can find for the most part about the good city of Enoch. I mean, I'm sure there's gotta be more information somewhere, and I'm gonna keep looking for that. But as of now, all I can really find is the information that's found in the Pearl of Great Price. That is a book translated by Joseph Smith, supposedly. So whatever you want to take from that, whatever you want to think about that is up to you. But basically, there is, you know, I mentioned earlier the other city of Enoch that's in the Bible, where it says Cain built the city and named it after his son Enoch. And it actually says, according to Midrashic tradition, the building of the city is sometimes interpreted as an ultimately flawed attempt by Cain at repentance or creating stability. So basically, it's he was trying to repent by building the city apparently, and it just went south. It didn't go the right way. And so yeah. So here's the weird thing. This is where the information gets kind of crazy. So I've talked about John Dee before, and he was the advisor to the Queen and stuff in like the 1600s, and you know he had a giant library and stuff, and he was super into Hermeticism and Enochian magic, and he he's basically the one who discovered, him and Edward Kelly, the medium, they discovered the Enochian language, which they believed could have been the language that was, used by Adam to name everything in paradise and stuff. So basically it was the first language. And actually during that time, during John Dee's time, apparently a lot of scholars and stuff, people were actually pretty infatuated with that idea of a primordial language of some sort. Basically a language that, that God, gave humanity in the very beginning. And, obviously the Tower of Babel happened, and, after that came crumbling down and stuff, the languages got confused, basically. So, because they were all, everyone was working together to build this giant tower, to go to heaven or whatever, whatever your take on that is. And basically they were getting too advanced or something, maybe. But because they were all able to communicate. And, so yeah, that God had to basically confuse the languages at that point. But, before that, and who knows, because obviously that happened after Noah and stuff. So who knows if Noah was still speaking this language, that the primordial language or whatever. I don't really know. But basically there is, speculation that there is some kind of language that Adam and Eve spoke in the very beginning. And so there was experiments done during John Dee's time to basically discover that language. And one popular experiment that I guess was done, I don't know how often exactly, but it was done. They actually would raise children in complete isolation, basically so that the children would never hear words. They would never hear anybody speak or anything. So I don't know how they fed them and stuff. I don't know about all that, but basically they would never hear any language. And so they would assume that if they started making noises and stuff, like the screams or grunts or something from the children, that those noises were basically closer to the original language spoken by Adam and Eve. And so, yeah, there were experiments with that done. And then, John Dee, he kind of goes at a different approach where he's just scrying. He's using divination, And so basically that's where this kind of comes from, is that that's why he got the Enochian language, and he believed that was the primordial language they were all looking for and stuff. But, I mentioned earlier that he used a black obsidian scrying mirror. And the weird thing is that that obsidian stone has been analyzed, and basically they found that it came from Mexico, pretty close to where Mexico City is, about 50 miles away or so from Mexico City is where they think it might have come from, maybe 30 miles or something. And so it probably was used in ancient Mexico City. It was probably brought there, and the Spaniards took over that city. It was called Tenochtitlan at that time, and the Spaniards took that city over. John Dee, the 16th century English occultist and advisor to Queen Elizabeth I, utilized a polished obsidian mirror for scrying, or attempting to see spirits and gain knowledge. Modern analysis revealed this mirror is a Mesoamerican artifact, likely originating from Aztec Tenochtitlan and brought to Europe after the Spanish conquest, where it was repurposed for angelic magic. Tenochtitlan was founded in 1325 on a marshy island in Lake Texcoco by the Mexica people, or Aztecs, marking the start of their capital and eventual empire in the Valley of Mexico. According to legend, they chose the site after seeing an eagle perched on top of a cactus devouring a snake, a sign prophesied by their god Huitzilopochtli. While the traditional historical founding date of Tenochtitlan is 1325 AD, archaeological findings suggest the area could be older or influenced by much earlier civilizations, possibly even back to the son of Cain. So some people think that Tenochtitlan, or Mexico City in ancient times basically, that it could have been the City of Enoch. Obviously the city of the evil Enoch, or the son of Cain. And like I said, it says it's founded in 1325, but who knows how accurate that is. And I'm sure that the area existed during that time still, at least, so who knows if the city was there or they started building stuff right away or exactly what happened. But you look at that name Tenochtitlan, and it has Enoch right in the middle of it, so that's kind of one of the reasons why people think that it could be the City of Enoch, because it's basically named after Enoch. It has Enoch's name in it. And who knows where Cain ended up. He was wandering, right? So he just wandered east of Eden, and on a flat earth, right? If you keep going east, you basically just go in a circle. So he could have really just gone east and ended up in Mexico, and that's where he ended up. And they built the city there. But yeah, that's a strange thing about it, is that that stone that John Dee used to develop the Enochian language, which I've already speculated is probably the Enoch that is the son of Cain that it's attributed to, that language came from John Dee, who got it from Tenochtitlan, basically, because that stone came from Tenochtitlan. And so they were in Mesoamerica and stuff, they used obsidian for a lot of things, like weapons and stuff, obviously, and they use it for scrying mirrors. They use it for divination. And so it's kind of strange. They would actually sacrifice victims all the time. The Aztecs would, and the Mayans before that. And they would use, obsidian blades, basically, to cut the hearts out of people. And so, yeah, it's kind of strange. There's probably some demonic element to the obsidian scrying mirror that John Dee had, because it was probably used during sacrifices and stuff as a way to contact the spirits or whatever they're, doing it for. And so, yeah, it's just kind of strange. In Tenochtitlan, Aztec priests practiced scrying using highly polished dark obsidian mirrors, known as smoking mirrors, or Tezcat, to channel the god Tezcatlipoca for divination, prophecy, and communicating with the divine. These sacred tools were considered portals to the spirit world, allowing priests to see visions and interpret future events, including the dire omens that predicted the Spanish conquest. So yeah, after the Spanish conquered Tenochtitlan, they took whatever they found over to Europe. All kinds of artifacts and stuff that they were taking from there, and taking to Europe and selling and stuff. And so that's around the time it came into John Dee's possession. I think it was about 1582 or something when John Dee got it. And so he had that obsidian mirror, and then later he met up with Edward Kelly, and they used that mirror to develop the Enochian language. And so I think it's just kind of interesting because, like I said, if Tenochtitlan was actually a City of Enoch, then that would kind of make sense why the Enochian language came through that scrying mirror. Because, if Enoch, his presence was there, if his spirit or whatever was still lingering around that area, maybe that's who the Aztec priests and stuff were, talking to. They were channeling Enoch, the spirit of Enoch or something. And so it could have been in that stone base. It's drawn to that stone, drawn to that scrying mirror. And so when John Dee got it, that's who was talking to him through it. Maybe. And, he taught him his language, the Enochian language from the evil Enoch. There's even been some speculation that John Dee was talking to Metatron through the scrying mirror. And there's not anything that really confirms that Metatron's name was ever used or anything, but there's speculation that that's who he was talking to. And obviously Metatron is the same as the evil Enoch, at least in my opinion. That's what I think it is. And it's weird, like Metatron has been known to kind of communicate with a lot of people. Apparently Carlos Santana and stuff talks to Metatron, and he's been talking to him since the 90s. And that's like where he gets all his ideas for music and stuff, and he wants him to reach schools and kids and stuff with his music, and so he can influence them with it and stuff. And I've been talking about Hermes and Enoch a lot of times in a lot of my videos, and basically I've been making all these connections with how they all connect and stuff. And it's just really weird that in Tenochtitlan, I mentioned how they like the symbol they saw or the sign they saw was an eagle on top of a cactus eating a snake, and it's kind of like their flag or whatever, like the Tenochtitlan flag basically depicts that. And when you compare that image with the caduceus, the winged staff that Hermes and Mercury used, you can't deny that there's some similarities there, and it's pretty interesting how closely they resemble each other. And like obviously Hermes and Mercury they're the same as Enoch. Tenochtitlan could be the city of Enoch. And so yeah, but obviously in Mexico, Mesoamerica, there's always depictions of winged serpents and stuff, that they all like the feathered serpent gods and stuff. That was really a big thing, like Quetzalcoatl and stuff. And so I don't know if, obviously you could just say, oh, it's just because of that, but like when you look at the commonalities with the images, the caduceus and the Tenochtitlan flag, you can see that there is definitely some kind of influence, like that, almost like the caduceus influenced that flag. And it's Tenochtitlan was actually a really advanced city too. It was not just like people in teepees or something. It was there was giant pyramids and stuff, featuring canals, floating gardens, huge temples. So yeah, it's just really impressive place. When the Spaniards came there, they were all impressed by it. They thought it was crazy how advanced it was. And so the name of it actually means place of the cactus. That's what Tenochtitlan supposedly means. And there's also like some other deity named Tenoch, I think, in their mythologies and stuff. And so they think that, well, maybe it's just because it was named after that Tenoch guy. But I mean, who knows? Maybe Tenoch is Enoch. Maybe that's who they're talking about, is actually Enoch. In the context of the Book of Moses, specifically within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints theology, which expands on Genesis, Enoch is the son of Cain, the first murderer, and is associated with the early dark and sinful civilization built by his father after being banished to the land of Nod. According to the Book of Moses, Cain entered into a covenant with Satan to obtain power, becoming Master Mahan, or master of a secret, murderous combination. These dark practices, including covenants with Satan, were passed down through Cain's lineage. And it says Enoch is simply the patriarch of the line of Cain, which is depicted as having developed various human technologies, but also increased wicked behavior, culminating in Lamech. I think it's fascinating that it says that part about Lamech, it culminates in Lamech, because I mentioned before how, Lamech's the seventh from the devil, basically, in the line of Cain, and that it's like the farthest you can go on an octave before it starts over. 7's the farthest you can go. And so he was the very worst. And then Enoch was 7th from Adam, and he's the very best, you know. So it's just strange. So obviously, you know, Cain was, you know, had a covenant with Satan and stuff, and so his whole lineage was just wicked and stuff. And when you look at, like, you know, Mesoamerica, the Mayans and the Aztecs, I mean, they were brutal people, and they did daily sacrifices, like every day, and they were pretty brutal methods too of sacrifice. It wasn't just, I mean, a lot of it was just chopping heads off and stuff, but they got even more intense with some of them. And in some cases, they also sacrificed children and women. And so, yeah, they was definitely a pretty wicked way of living, I guess you could say. I mean, obviously, I think any civilization that practices sacrifice is just ridiculous. That's just a silly thing, and especially when you look into, like, their beliefs and stuff, like all the gods that they would sacrifice to and stuff, and really how it makes just no sense at all. Like, I mean, it just makes no sense. And so, but yeah, because their gods were bloodthirsty, basically. Their gods demanded blood. And so what kind of god is that? That sounds like Satan, basically. And so, yeah, that is another reason why Tenochtitlan, or that area, just that whole region, really, because who knows if it was Tenochtitlan that was the very first. Obviously, the Mayans came before the Aztecs, and the Aztecs were the ones who, you know, founded Tenochtitlan. And so maybe Cain's lineage was really the Mayans at first, and then they went to Tenochtitlan and named it after Enoch later. I don't know. There's a lot to it. And obviously, this could be totally false anyways, because, you know, there's, according to some sources, the city built by Cain is historically identified with the Mesopotamian city of Eridu near the Euphrates River. And so possibly that's where it was. But, I mean, who knows? And there's 2 Enochs, and so it's like maybe that's where the good city of Enoch was. Who knows? There's a lot to it, and there's a lot that you can speculate on. But, you know, but the weird facts are still there. The fact that John Dee got his scrying mirror from Tenochtitlan. Tenochtitlan has Enoch's name in it. They were pretty much satanic, sacrificing all the time and stuff. That's what Cain's lineage would have been doing. So yeah, there's definitely reason to believe that area is at least associated with the evil Enoch. So the last video that I made, I was talking about mirrors and how they're like a portal, and you know, how they're used for scrying, and that they actually used mercury to make mirrors. The metal mercury was actually used to make mirrors, and so I got thinking that maybe there's some kind of connection between mercury and obsidian, because they are both used for divination, basically. And you know, I mentioned before that mercury is used to communicate with spirits and stuff, and it said that, you know, that the obsidian scrying mirrors are kind of used for the same thing, to contact spirits and stuff. And so, you know, to me it seems there's got to be some kind of connection there, at least in that regard. And I found out that that black obsidian is actually recommended to be used during Mercury retrograde to help with grounding, protection against negative energy, and maintaining stability. So yeah, I guess during retrograde you want to have obsidian around you during Mercury retrograde. And you know, I mentioned before that, like, maybe the planet is like some kind of energy or whatever, and it spins, and it can cause mercury that might be found, you know, in other areas and technologies, and, you know, the tops of pyramids or whatever, under pyramids, under temples. It could cause that mercury to also spin backwards and, you know, cause problems and stuff. And so it's kind of strange. And actually, pools of liquid mercury were discovered under temples in Teotihuacan, which is about 30 miles from Tenochtitlan. And so, yeah, and that place is actually known for its obsidian. And yeah, so suggesting ritualistic, symbolic, or perhaps technological use. So yeah, the same place that they would get obsidian from, at least in large quantities, they get a place that was known for obsidian. They happen to find large quantities of mercury, of liquid mercury, under the temples in that location. And they would use the obsidian to cut the hearts out of people and stuff, like on the top of the temple. And so maybe below the temple, the mercury was doing something as well. And it's all working together to, conjure spirits and stuff. And so, yeah, I just found that to be really weird as well, that there's that connection on top of everything else I've been talking about. The movie Apocalypto kind of shows what that time was like. It's about the Mayans and sacrifice and stuff, and it's pretty crazy. So if you want to get an idea of that, what that time was like and what that area was like, you should watch that movie.